It was incomplete. The Heart Sutra. Author: Kufudo. Translator: Masaki Akiyama. Introduction. Nobody can understand the Heart Sutra except those who have been awakened spiritually. This is a word of Master Musa Hisagoi, the founder of Byaku Shinkokai and World Peace Prayer Society, who was my mentor for spiritual guidance. A number of people have certainly challenged to decipher the Heart Sutra in the past. However, most of interpretations in the world are filled with quite nihilistic contents as long as I know, just enumerating meaningless examples such as, that is nothing, this is also nothing. Above all, most of their interpretations cannot distinguish nothing from emptiness. Therefore, the situation surrounding the Heart Sutra has become so confused beyond control. Other interpretations also cannot draw a unified overall picture of the Heart Sutra because they just interpret only a part of the scripture. Partially their interpretations make sense, but are inconsistent as a whole with many contradictions. In fact, the Heart Sutra has been in such a chaotic situation for around 2,000 years. Under such a background, the author showed the result of interpretation of the Heart Sutra successfully based on his past experience and spiritual awakening, refer to just awakening from now. We can say that this book is quite a valuable one because we will be able to get out of such a chaotic situation at once. The author is sure that the content of this book has become very profound because the author could show quite a specific and well-ordered picture of the cosmos that is finely consistent without contradiction, and also could indicate the way to lead people to a certain enlightenment while clarifying the relationship between the cosmos and human beings. The author will explain of the precious conclusion, which have been deciphered in this way, specifically and logically in this book as far as the paper permits. The author will reveal in the final part of this book that the Heart Sutra is still incomplete. The incomplete part of the Heart Sutra will be clarified in this book and finally completed by adding chapter of completion. The title of this book derives from this background. The Heart Sutra is one of the most famous scriptures in Buddhism, and it is difficult to find a person who is not familiar with the name of this scripture. However, nobody but only the author could reveal the real meaning of the Heart Sutra. This is true and never false. I was born on the 4th of February, 1943, and has been always searching for the way to clarify man and the cosmos because I was eager to know it since childhood. I am not a serious Buddhist. However, in my parents' house, an old-fashioned Japanese style, there was a Buddhist altar next to a Shinto shrine and a family's Buddhist altar room next to a Shoinzukuri-style room. When I was a child, I have frequently heard my mother chanting the Heart Sutra in front of the Buddhist altar and felt familiar with it. Time passed. I learned physics at a university and after graduation studied electronic engineering and cerebral physiology at a national institute for 11 years. I have lived as an academic researcher with the research theme of information processing mechanism of the human visual system. When I was 27 years old, the guidance by great guardian spirits has started in such a way that they responded to my feelings to seek the truth sincerely and gave me a training name, Kufudo. After that, I have attained spiritual awakening at last after accumulating the ascetic practice not in the mountains, but staying in the real world. During this spiritual training period, I received the 4 main revelations concerning the future of mankind and my own mission along the will of great guardian spirits. While living as one of social members, I can say in retrospect that I have a rare experience to have achieved these revelations one by one and still now to continue the spiritual and practical activities related to the future of mankind. The author was never satisfied with only his own enlightenment. He believed that it is exactly the practice of truth suitable for him to make the most of his experience of enlightenment to the real society without going into religious activities as he does not like smack of religions. After retired an institute of a university, the author has continuously deepened his spiritual training without keeping himself in the mountains and founded a private laboratory by himself with the vow to keep a direct relationship with society, and still now it is continuing. In the laboratory, the author has engaged in the development of basic technologies related to artificial intelligence such as image processing, 3D maps, self-positioning, and recognition technology for more than 30 years. In recent years, the author is deeply involved in the Heart Sutra while continuing to engage in society as the position of a researcher and chief executive officer of his company. In retrospect, everything in my history was based on the motivation that I was eager to know man and the cosmos. While accumulating experiences of spiritual practice, I am sure that I was able to explore the truth universally and express it objectively because I had a scientist's language and logical thinking. My ascetic practice to clarify man and the cosmos has started when I was mid-20s. It has been a long and hard way for me, however. The author is currently writing this book after obtaining the reliable answer after half a lifetime. The Heart Sutra arose during Buddhism confusion. After Buddha entered Nirvana, Buddhism has fallen into a large confusion. However, people gathered with the hope of reconstructing Buddhism. Mahayanist Buddhism arose at that time around such sympathized people after an enlightened person appeared. In Mahayanist Buddhism, a universal view, which had never existed before, was built and a system of thoughts around emptiness was produced. In this book, the author will make it a rule to describe the new view of the world preached in the Heart Sutra as the view of the world. Therefore, if one tries to interpret it within the doctrine of conventional initial Buddhism, one can never build an effective view of the cosmos that makes sense and will be puzzled at the immediate failure of interpretation. In fact, we cannot find anything in most interpretations of the Heart Sutra in the world that can be regarded as a view of the world. They cannot step out of the superficial interpretation of words and phrases and fail to represent the overall picture without blur due to the bias to partial interpretations. We cannot come across any commentary among them enough to convince readers from the bottom of their heart. Nevertheless, the Heart Sutra has survived in history nearly 2,000 years, without being deciphered and with its meaning remaining unknown. However, once the author deciphered the Heart Sutra through his own experience of enlightenment, accumulated contemporary intelligence, and the integration of the both, one can find the system of thoughts coming up, which was described perfectly to lead people to salvation. The overall picture is shown quite clearly with an admirable configuration that makes sense, and its details are also written consistently without contradiction. While keeping the continuity of initial Buddhism, the Heart Sutra preaches the grand view of the world by introducing a new concept and represents the cosmic structure and relationship between man and the cosmos using a thorough technique of logic. Therefore, you need to pay attention to the following points when you accept the new interpretation of this book without sticking to past wrong interpretations. Since the core part of the Heart Sutra, that is, Chapter 3, 4 and 5, are originally extremely logical expressions, this book that deciphered them must also become logical inevitably. If you lose sight of the assembly of chapter-based logic, you will immediately miss the flow of logic. Therefore, the author would like to recommend readers to read this book in order without skipping. Then, the splendidly organized, beautiful overall picture of the Heart Sutra should be definitely visible to everybody.